Who's primed for an upset this weekend? Is it Houston or is it the Commanders? We'll talk about that here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You got that right. It is your team every day here on Locked On NFL. We thank you for making us your first listen. And a reminder, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts, whether you watch them or listen to them. Make sure you tap into that location each and every day so you do not miss an episode of Locked On NFL. It's Wednesday, and that means today, from the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Shout out to those everydayers that join us all the time here on Locked On NFL. We appreciate you. And if you're new, welcome to the show. I hope you enjoy it. Speaking of the show, you can find us over on Amazon Music. Make sure you check us out on Amazon Music. That is Locked On NFL. All right, we ain't going to bury the lead no more. David Harrison is here, as he always is on Wednesday. And his team is in the playoffs. Mine isn't, but I'm a little jealous, but that's all right. He's going to share a little bit of his playoff wisdom with us today. Here's what we're going to talk about. We're going to end the show talking about Josh speaking on Lamar Jackson in very nice fashion. Old defensive coordinators and young offensive coordinators. Since they're playing the old way, how come everybody wants this new innovative offensive coordinator? Don't you think we ought to just get somebody who, like Chip Kelly, who knows the old stuff? Maybe we'll talk about that. Deion to Dallas is all we need for whether it works or doesn't is going to be spectacular because prime time is straight up box office. First and foremost, we're going to start at the top with my man David talking about his team and another team in a very similar situation. The Commanders and the Texans are both on the road. I'm just wondering if they can do the unthinkable. I think there's a little bit of vulnerability, David, because at some point Detroit, man, somebody has to make them. You have to show them that, yeah, your second team is good on defense, but there ain't nothing like those starters.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Lions are dealing with a lot of injuries. You know, that's on a news story. 16 players on injured reserve. I don't know if that's the most in the NFL, but it's got to be up there if it's not the most. But it's certainly the most penalties that a serious contender has taken on, right? Like no other team. The Chiefs, the Bills, none of those guys, the Eagles are taking on that much water and still staying afloat, like still being the number one team in the NFC. You know what I mean? So I think there's a lot of credit that needs to be given to the Detroit Lions. But again, every time you have one of those injuries, there does come with a little bit more vulnerability and losing one of your starting cornerbacks in Carlton Davis, losing Aiden Hutchinson obviously is incredibly important, losing Derek Barnes. Now they might get, they are expected to get David Montgomery back this week, but they might be without Kevin Zeitler, a very important offensive lineman. And look, I mean, if you know football, you lose one lineman. I'm not saying like your entire line just falls apart, but it definitely weakens that front. And the Washington Commanders haven't been all that great in getting penetration and sacking quarterbacks and all that stuff, but you give them a little bit of an opening, and that's where some of those things can kind of go sideways. So we'll see, if they're trying to get Teron Armstrong or Armstead back as well. Like we'll see if they can get all of these players back. But yeah, I think if you're the Washington Commanders, you kind of have to come out here and say, okay, who is this team identity-wise? Because that's something that Dan Quinn praised the Lions for, is no matter what injury they took, no matter what player they went out with, they didn't come out here and just try to completely reinvent themselves. They trusted the players they had left on the field, and they said, listen, we are still the Detroit Lions. Our identity is blitz-heavy man coverage on defense. Our identity on offense is what it is. Even without David Montgomery, we're still going to lean on the running backs. We're still going to lean on our ground game to get things going, and we're still going to be successful. So the Lions are going to be who they're going to be regardless of the players that are on the field, and ultimately that's what you're scheming against if you're the Washington Commanders. How does this team like to play? How do we best match up against that play style? And then from there, you start trying to whittle down to find the individual matchups.
One thing that's mentioned a lot, Matt Derry, our friend that Locked On Lions, he talked about inexperience, and he talked about Washington having to go down to the wire in all of their games, like last play walk-off situations to win like their last 5 or 6 games. I'm going to let you hear him, and then I'll come back and tell you why inexperience sometimes can be your best friend.
What an ironic and kind of interesting showdown we're going to have Saturday night. Washington did their part last night, an impressive 23-20 victory in Tampa over the Bucs to be the lowest seed to advance, the 7th-seeded Green Bay Packers. Oh, Peter Bukowski's Packers. Nice performance in Philly, guys. Oh, my God. That was pathetic. So Lions draw the Commanders, and we talked about this a lot last week. We had Ross Tucker on the show as well, and he brought it up. If you were looking at a matchup that you wanted for the Lions, wouldn't it be Washington? Very inexperienced. Not a lot of guys that have been this deep into the playoffs. And a team, quite honestly, that over their last 5 wins that they've had have all been in the last possession. They needed a 10 seconds left Jaden Daniels touchdown to beat the Eagles a few weeks ago. I just thought it would be, I think it's going to be very difficult for a Washington team to go into Tampa Bay the first week and win, which they did last night by 3. Again, their last 5 wins have all come in their last possession. And then now have to come to Detroit and play the Lions. And Vegas agrees.
Yeah, I agree that it's going to be tough. By the way, for what it's worth, shout out to my man, Peter Bukowski. I love you, and I know David loves you, but people just always seem to want to take shots at Peter, and I just decided to leave it in there, man. I don't know why I did that. But
when you make bold statements the way that Peter Bukowski does, that's what happens. That's what happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's my dude, though. He can take it. He's a big boy. David, I'm going to use an analogy because that's what I always do. When I was younger, I used to get on roller coasters. Like, I didn't care how scary they were, I'd get on them. And then when I had kids, they wanted to get on them. And I got on them with them because I said, well, I ain't going to send my kid up there. If something happens, I'll be sad anyway. So I go up there and I'd be scared as hell, right? You can't get me on a roller coaster now. You know why? Because I'm smart, I'm older, I'm experienced. Sometimes being inexperienced means you don't give a you know what, and you just let it all hang out, bro.
I mean, listen, there's one part of the movie Draft Day that is accurate. And that part of the Draft Day movie that is accurate is, does the problem matter, right? Does the perceived weakness matter? We just talked about those Detroit Lions injuries. Okay, they got a lot of injuries. The question is, does it really matter? Like, can you match up against where those weaknesses are and take advantage? Because if you can't take advantage of them, which a lot of teams haven't been able to this year, it doesn't matter that if you can't stop the Detroit Lions defense, even without Aiden Hutchinson, it doesn't matter that Aiden Hutchinson's on the sideline. You know what I mean? Like, so it's that kind of thing. So for the Washington Commanders, their inexperience only matters if the moment gets to them, right? That's the key. The theory of inexperience in the postseason is they don't understand the environment, they don't understand the pressure, Okay, but if that environment doesn't get to them, if that pressure doesn't get to them, it doesn't matter. And I'll tell you right now, so far, we have not seen any environment, situation, or context get to quarterback Jaden Daniels, and that is the key. Now, he was asked about this game. He was asked about the Lions. And he said he's heard that the Lions fans are electric. The Lions fans give a great presence to that stadium. They said, okay, how's that going to affect you? And he's like, it's not. You know what I mean? So he acknowledges how great they are and how electric that environment's going to be. And I'll tell you right now, it's going to be electric. But if it doesn't bother Jaden Daniels, it doesn't matter. It's just fun. It's just there. The other part of this is there are enough players on this team, coaches on this staff that have been through there to give the guys who have not been there some experience. Now, and I'll give you this too. Yes, it's tough to win on the road. The Washington Commanders have done that consistently this season. Yes, it's tough to win on these last-minute drives. But I think when we talk about these last-minute drives, people have to understand the context of what's going on here, right? These aren't games. Like, everybody looks at the Hail Mary against Chicago Bears, and I think what people are doing is kind of applying that context to the rest of these games. These are not games like that, right? These are games where you take the New Orleans Saints game, for example. Yes, the last play of the game decided that game. What I will tell you is they also lost one of their starting safeties. Talk about injuries. Does it matter? The New Orleans Saints were able to exploit the loss of that starting safety there at the end of the game. They made adjustments better than the Commanders' defense made adjustments. They were able to score a late touchdown, go for 2 to try to win the game. They failed. The Commanders come out with a win. That starting safety, he's healthy now. It's Jeremy Chen. So that part of this game is not there. Some of these other games, talking about last-second wins, look, the Washington Commanders got the ball with 4:41 left in the game against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Game is tied 20-20. 4 minutes, 41 seconds, multiple times out, 2-minute warning coming up, right? Listen, Wig, with 3 minutes left in the game, the Washington Commanders got the ball down the Tampa Bay 45 on a 21-yard pass to De'Ami Brown. 3 minutes left in the game, 45-yard line. So when I tell you that the game ended on a game-winning field goal after the Buccaneers had exhausted all their timeouts and the 2-minute warning, what does that tell you? That tells you that the Washington Commanders got the ball into Bucs territory and said, you know what? We're going to grind this thing out. We're going to purposely take a last-second field goal to get a win here. This isn't a 20-17 game with 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and the Commanders got to drive, for a last-second field goal to put them into the game. This is a team that said with 4 minutes and 41 seconds left, we're going to run our 4-minute offense. We're going to take control, and we are going to strangle the life out of your chance to win this game, and we're going to win it ourselves. So put the context behind these last-second wins. These aren't desperation wins week after week after week. These are wins that the Washington Commanders sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes are taking control and saying we're going to win at the last second, not because it's what we need, because it's what we deem we're going to do.
It's game management 101. Even when you're losing, you can still manage the game to make sure you don't give the other team more time. I think one of the things Washington has to do is stay true to itself. Don't start going for it. Kick those field goals when you get a chance, because if Detroit starts going for it and they start missing them, guess what? You're close at the end. And what this tells me is with the way they made the doink field goal, and Jake Daniels just kind of got up just like he was just leaving Sunday school like any big deal. He's
well, I will tell you, though, if it's 4th and 2, 4th and 3, DQ's probably going to go for it.
Yeah, and I don't want them to get that. Don't let them suck you into that foolishness, man. That's what they do. And you know what? Make them pay for doing it, but you get your points every time. That's a 6-point turnover each and every time.
That's how they do it.
Yep, I know they do, man. So it's going to be interesting. I want to give Houston and Kansas City their just due. So we'll do that at the top of segment 2. But speaking of a team that has won some doink games and close games at the end of the game, it's the Kansas City Chiefs, man. They just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. Can their luck run out, and can Houston be the team that forces that luck to run out? We'll discuss that and more in segment 2 on Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you in part by FanDuel. That is correct, man. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. Now, the FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. I know when Saquon Barkley slid down last week, it disappointed a lot of y'all, but don't worry about it. Don't let it come down to the last place. When you win, you get paid instantly, no waiting around for your winnings, whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs. FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we continue with can the unthinkable happen? Can there be an upset? And one of those teams that has been kind of getting by the skin of the teeth. It's hard to say that when the team won 15 games, like they've been getting by. A win is a win, right? And we know what the Chiefs are capable of doing in the playoffs, because last year they couldn't catch the ball, and then they go up to Buffalo and it's 100 degrees below zero, and they catch everything in sight with their hands. So when it matters most. But don't get too comfortable now and do what Minnesota thought. They just thought they were just going to walk through the Rams last week, and you saw what happened. I want you to hear the guys from Locked On Chiefs. They sound real confident. They should, but I'm telling you, they need to be careful.
The Chiefs end up with a game that we picked against. We thought the Chargers were going to put up more of a fight against the Houston Texans, and kudos to the Texans. I didn't think that they'd be able to match the physicality. They did. I didn't think they'd be able to match the intensity. They did, especially Derek Stingley. The only thing they couldn't do is corral Lad McConkey, which helped me with my playoff fantasy run. Thank you, guys. But other than that, the Texans looked like they were well prepared and ready to deal with the Chargers.
They didn't start that way, though. Like, they got into it. They got to a point where they started making plays. Like, they made a big play towards the end of the first half, long third down, threw the ball down the middle of the field, got a big conversion, and it led them to a touchdown, and they ended up taking the lead and never giving it back. To me, this game is a more of a indictment necessarily on Herbert than it really is probably the Texans playing well.
Look, I was critical of Justin Herbert after that game too, because people always just put him in the top 5 But the Houston Texans had a lot to do with that also. So let me tell you what sets up for a good upset for me. Do they have capable players? You can't deny C.J. Stroud's talent. Nico Collins is one hell of a receiver. Laramie Tunsil is probably a Hall of Fame left tackle. You go over to defense, they got two really good pass rushers who really get after it. And Derek Stingley, you know what? That kid is a real good, one of the great cornerbacks in this league. So they have great players. And it just reminds me, I'm going to date myself, back when Peyton Manning played against those Chargers that had LaDainian Tomlinson and Antonio Cromartie and all of these. They just had just enough of the top line people to make an upset. And I think you better watch out this week in Kansas City.
Yeah, look, man, I mean, you obviously have the any given Sunday, but also the Houston Texans are not a bad team. They have some flaws. They have had some issues, certainly not as good offensively as they were last year. Some of that has to do with injuries to receivers. Some of that has to do with offensive line inconsistency. But, at the end of the day, Kansas City Chiefs have not exactly been juggernauts in the way they've won some of these games. Now, they've won a lot of games. Give them all the credit in the world for doing that. They found a way to gut it out. But I think it's funny because we come into this conversation and say, man, look at all the close games the Chiefs have had. They're going to be the favorites win the Super Bowl. But then we look at the Commanders, say, look at all the close games they've had. That's a bad thing. Again, it's only a bad thing if it matters. Here's where it matters for the Kansas City Chiefs is there is an opening here for this Houston Texans coaching staff to really flex its muscles, because the Kansas City Chiefs look to me like a team that is one of two things. It's either externally motivated this year, which would be new because Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, all you guys have always been internally motivated. They're self-driven guys who want to go out there and be successful. But what happens to the advanced kid? What happens to the kid that needs to be in advanced classes before they get put in advanced classes? If people don't realize soon enough that they need to be in advanced classes, they start misbehaving, they start acting out, they start getting bad grades. Why? Because they're bored.
They're bored.
The Kansas City Chiefs kind of remind me of like the LeBron Lakers and the LeBron Cavaliers and all that stuff. The only problem is LeBron Lakers haven't realized y'all can't coast into the tournament anymore. You actually got to fight for your spot. But hopefully you get the point. Kansas City Chiefs kind of look like a team that says, all right, tell us when the playoffs start, then we'll turn it up. So we'll see if that's what happens this weekend. If that's what happens this weekend, basically, I'm going to look at the rest of the regular season and say they were bored. They were waiting for the advanced classes. They were waiting for the AP classes. That's what they were doing. Now, there's another trend here with the Chiefs. The Chiefs do not score a lot of points in the first quarter. They've only scored double-digit points in the first quarter twice this season. Carolina Panthers, Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, they also don't score a lot in the third quarter. They've only scored double-digit points in the third quarter 0 times. However, they score double-digit points in the second quarter and the fourth quarter much more often. So what that kind of lends me to think is this is a coaching staff that says, look, we're not as talented as we were in the past. We can't just come out here and say, we're going to put our foot on your neck. You're not going to move. You're going to do exactly what we tell you to do. They know, maybe, again, possibly, that we got to come out. It's like a boxing match. We're going to jab. We're going to jab. We're going to slip. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to see what you want to throw. Then we're going to counter you in the second quarter. Then we're going to halftime, and we know you're making adjustments. So we're going to come out in the third quarter, and we're not going to show you all of our cards. I'm going to switch from boxing to poker. We're not going to show you all of our cards. We're going to see how you want to play coming out of halftime. Then that fourth quarter, once we get a beat on you, that's when we're going to come after you. So if you're the Houston Texans coaching staff, if it's not the externally motivated thing that I'm looking at, it's the coaching thing that I'm looking at. The Houston Texans coaching staff. Now the question is, are you going to come out trying to throw those haymakers in the first quarter, try to throw those haymakers in the third quarter, and hope that you can put up enough points before they're allowed to make adjustments? Because think about it, the more pressure you put on them, the more you restrict how they can come at you anyway. Even once they're onto your game, if you're up by 10, 13 points in the fourth quarter, they may know what you're doing, but they're limited in their response because they need to catch up, right?
Correct.
So the question is, do you take that approach? Or if you're the Houston Texans, do you come out and jab with them in the first quarter and then try to match them adjustment for adjustment, same thing in the second half? It's an interesting dilemma. The coach staffs have to do it, but I'll tell you right now, this is an opportunity for Bobby Slowick specifically to really show that he should be one of the best young minds, be known as one of the best young minds in the NFL offensively versus Steve Spagnuolo, who's one of these veteran defensive coaches that knows how to counter what these young coaches are coming up with.
My key to this game is the weakest unit on this team are it's the edge of the offensive line for Kansas City. The strongest unit in this game is the defensive ends for the Houston Texans. You better not get behind, and they can get pressure on you with just 4, And now they make you abandon that running game, and they make you get rid of this. We're going to limit possessions mentality that the Chiefs have had for a lot of these games this year. They could get in a world of hurt if they make some turnovers. And Fairburn has been a little bit more consistent, I believe, than Harrison Butker, who missed a lot of time this season. Real quick to go through Big D, talking about coaches. Speaking of Kansas City, they got two old coaches like Spagnuolo and Andy Reid. Man, they like older than me, right? And I'm pretty old. All of the talk with all of these new teams, man, is that they want a young offensive coordinator. Yeah. But old defensive coordinators, I mentioned like Vic Fangio and guys like that, and Spagnuolo, they're getting it done. Dallas is very interesting because now Dallas is in the hunt for a new coach. So what I want to do in segment 3, I want to talk about that subject. I'm going to talk about Deion Sanders, the possibility of him going to Dallas and how much fun that'll be for all of us. And then just touch on the fact that people just want these young offensive play callers to all of a sudden be head coaches, and it kind of gets on my nerves. We'll discuss that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. All right, today's show is sponsored in part and brought to you by LinkedIn Talent Solutions. I have done it, man. I have grown a couple of small businesses, and in 2025, it comes down to how well you can hire. It's all about people. And let's face it, better hires start with smarter insights. It's where LinkedIn comes in. With the strongest hiring data available, LinkedIn helps you identify the right candidates, giving you the confidence to make the best decisions for your business. I've used LinkedIn Jobs myself, and I can tell you it's a game changer when it comes to hiring the right fit. Because when you're building a business, you're dealing with permits, you're dealing with contractors, you're also dealing with codes and regulations. It's hard for you to realize, oh, we're opening it up next week, and I ain't hired a staff. Right? I know from experience how important it is to make the right hire decisions, having access to insights like what skills a candidate has and how they're connected to your network. That helps you feel confident when you pull that trigger. Hire smarter this year. Find your next great hire on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We're moving along here on Locked On NFL. We're talking playoffs, talking about the unthinkable things that may occur in the playoffs for certain teams. It's kind of unthinkable that a coach can win 12 games a couple of years in a row, then be saddled with salary cap problems and a bad offensive line, and all of a sudden he loses his job. That's exactly what happened to Mike McCarthy. I want you to hear from Landon McCool of Locked On Cowboys before we start talking about prime time, and then how coaches and assistant coaches are viewed around the NFL when they're going for jobs.
Hi, I'm Landon McCool with the Locked On Cowboys podcast, and these are some final notes on the Mike McCarthy era in Dallas. I believe Mike McCarthy proved to himself and to the league that he is a capable coach, able to raise the floor on a franchise. And I think he proved that by winning with a backup quarterback in multiple seasons over stretches of time. He won 36 games over 3 seasons in the middle of his 5 years with the Dallas Cowboys, and I think you can call that in a lot of ways a proven winner. But I also believe that the reason that you didn't re-sign Mike to an extension just recently is the same reason you didn't sign him to an extension at the end of the 2023 season, which is that they basically had an inability to break through the ceiling of the divisional round of the playoffs. And I think if that was the standard, which it really seems like it was, then the Dallas Cowboys probably should have gone ahead and fired Mike McCarthy at the end of that Green Bay game.
I think that makes a lot of sense. It's weird, though, that a guy can get to the divisional and get fired. In the NFC, I believe it's in the NFC, there's only one team that was in the divisional round this year that was there last year, and that's Detroit. There are 3 new teams. There's a lot of turnover. Prime time. First of all, on McCarthy, and then tell me, I think prime time works for this reason, because he's a superstar type coach that actually has reverence for the owner. And I think that would play a big part in having a little cohesion, but he's still going to be saddled with the same problems that McCarthy has until they get their cap fixed.
Yeah. Here's the thing about Deion, and here's why he wouldn't be a fit for the Dallas Cowboys, and why I don't think he would be a fit for an NFL owner. NFL owners are very conscious of their egos. They're very conscious of their image. And the last thing they want is a head coach that is going to call them out for not doing what's best for the organization. And I don't know the first time, but Deion is not going to pull punches. And Deion is going to let you know if there's a player out there that he wanted to sign and he didn't care how much money it took, and the GM or the owner made a decision because of finances to not give the contract that the player wanted to the player to bring them to Dallas, he's going to let it be known. He's going to let it be known. And he's going to let it be known later when they can't throw the ball because T. Higgins is playing for the New England Patriots and not the Dallas Cowboys. He's going to let it be known. You know what I mean? NFL players aren't going to appreciate his willingness to call them out in front of the media. And Deion is going to stand on business and say, look, I've been in your shoes. I know what it's like. And I'm telling you right now, out of respect for you as a player, I'm going to be honest about your performance, good and bad. And if you don't like it, there's 31 other teams that you can try to go play for. I just think that Deion's approach could cause him some problems in the National Football League. I don't think it's necessarily fair and warranted, but I mean, all you got to do is look at the Madden football game to understand how much the owners want to protect their image. I mean, they literally went out of their way to tell EA Sports, you will not have empty stands on your video game, which is why when you're playing with the Washington Commanders and you're having a 1-win season in the final week of the year, your stands will be filled to the brim. And it's weird. You know what I mean? It's weird. Like, it doesn't actually matter in the grand scheme of things, but that's how these owners think. So they don't want a coach who has that type of approach more often than not. Usually you're more critical coaches. I mean, referees are going to get it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just one of those things. Now, that's the perception, right? But the truth of the matter is Deion also knows the NFL. Deion knows the business. So if Deion says, I'm going to come work in the NFL, he's accepting all of those factors. And Deion's not stupid. Like, Deion is not a robot with batteries in him, and I just am the way I am, and I can't ever change, and I can't ever adjust. So if Deion wants to deal with what the NFL is going to throw at him, then Deion's certainly capable. You know what I mean? So again, like, there's the perception of who Deion is because he's doing this as a college coach, where we all know they get away with that stuff. You know what I mean? The NFL is a different animal, is a different beast. I mean, Nick Saban didn't say some of the things he said to reporters and about players at Miami that he did at Alabama. So it's, you know, it's one of those things. It's one of those things. And we've seen college coaches who can't handle it. Greg Schiano, looking at you, you know what I mean? Went to the NFL, tried to run like a college program. The NFL program said, nah, bro, go back to Rutgers. And, you know, so that is what it is. But I don't think Deion is a one-trick pony. I don't think Deion is, like I said, a robot who just runs on his own batteries. Like, I think Deion's a smart man. So if he wants to come to the NFL, I think he knows what he's getting himself into and is capable. But, you know, right off the cuff, like, without talking to Deion and knowing that he's willing and wanting to do that, those would be the perceptions of why you would say Deion isn't going to be successful in the NFL. But it's something we won't know will happen until it actually happens. I
actually thought there would be a market for older coaches, the way Chip Kelly, the way Gus Malzahn has done in college, and say, you know what, here's the dilemma. People want an offensive play caller to be their head coach because they're worried that if you hire a defensive coordinator and you have success, then the offensive coordinator is going to get poached. So that's like, if you're a bad team worried about that, though, it's like, ask Commander fan. I'll ask you right now. The Commanders don't care if Kingsbury gets poached because they've already started winning. And that's all that matters, that they got Dan Quinn, and they feel like if Dan Quinn found him, he can find another one who can do the same thing. Now, I'm thinking maybe you get some of these old coaches that won't be given another chance. The same way Steve Spagnuolo, even though he's interviewing, probably won't be given another chance, and he's still coaching defense. Why do you think the perception is that when you're an older offensive guy, the game has passed you by, but somehow when you're an older defensive guy, the game hasn't passed you by? That doesn't make any sense to me.
So I think it's just a reflection of our society. So I'm going to in a different light. You got burger chefs across the world, right? If Burger King comes out with a new burger and it's got a sexy commercial, if McDonald's wants to counter it, they want to create a new burger themselves that's going to beat Burger King's new burger. You're going to go with the new burger chef who's just cutting his teeth in the business or her teeth in the business, or you're going to go with the older one who you kind of know what their tricks are. Now you flip the other side. If McDonald's just wants to know, is that burger really a problem? Do we even really need to worry about it? You're going to go after the young guy who's got little experience. You're going to go after the old guy who's seen everything the burger industry has done in the last 20, 25 years. You're going to go after the old guy. It's the same way. Offensive coaches are looked at as innovators. They're not looked at as guys who are stuck in their way, guys who have a pattern, who kind of are who they are. And defensive coaches who are older are looked at guys who have seen the ebbs and the flows of the game, because for the last 5, 6, 7 years, these defense coordinators have had to adjust to the rise in passing games. Like, are wide receivers getting better in the college level, and that's why you're finding stars in the 4th, 5th, 6th rounds of NFL drafts, or are offensive systems getting smarter and using them and exploiting defenses? The society would tell you it's the systems and the schemes that are getting smarter, therefore the coaches who are innovating. However, as a defensive coach, I also know, look, the better the pass game gets, the better the pass defense gets. The better the pass defense gets, the more the run game is going to start to come back. The top 5, 6 teams in the NFL in rushing this year, all in the playoffs. That's not a coincidence. So now, when the run game starts to come back, if I'm an NFL owner, a GM, or a head coach, I want a defensive coordinator who remembers the last time the running games were really strong and starts to notice, hey, they're starting to do some things that Jerome Bettis used to do. They're starting to do some things that Ricky Running Waters used to do. I saw that. I know how to counter that. Your young defensive coordinator who's only defended the pass game because that's what he's grown up defending may not know or may not be able to catch up to that as fast. I think that's the reason you had that dynamic.
Sounds like what you're going back to our military experience here. It sounds like it's the difference between a recon guy and a guy who does extractions. While they're both specialized, they have 2 totally different missions. Like one guy's there to go get people, the other guy's to find out where the other guy is. So look, I get it.
Some of us older folks know how to innovate too. Don't get crazy now.
Yeah, I know it, right? We do know how to innovate. Somebody that has innovated very well and has changed the game of both Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. With all of this MVP talk and who's better and who is worth more and whose teammates are helping them, it's just nice to hear guys talk good about each other. Kevin Oestreicher spoke on and quoted some of the things that Josh Allen said about Lamar Allen as we head to what I believe is one of the biggest games that I've seen in a long time.
He said that they got beat pretty badly during the game in week 4. He said they got after us early this year. It's a great team. It's a great QB with Lamar and what he's able to do. He's one of the most dynamic, if not the most dynamic quarterbacks in the league. He's so fun to watch. And obviously mentioned the fact that he'll be facing off against the defense. He'll watch the defense on film this week. He's not going to be watching Ravens offensive tape. That makes no sense. I know when people talk about quarterback battles, it's like, oh, Lamar Jackson versus Josh Allen, who's going to come out on top? But it's not like Josh is trying to get the best. It's not like Lamar's playing pass rusher, or, it's not like Josh is playing corner out there. Like it's Ravens offense versus Bills defense, and then Bills offense versus Ravens defense. But this is a long line of praise that both Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen have given one another. And obviously it's going to be more of the same this week.
All right, so here we go. It's polarizing for a bunch of reasons, and I don't even want to go through all of them. But one thing about it is they both came into the league with similar questions about them, and they have both exceeded the expectations. And I'm looking forward to them going side by side and putting that thing all on the line this weekend.
Yeah, look, there's nothing wrong with people not wanting to put up bulletin board material. You know what I mean? The whole, like, you wouldn't like me when I'm angry type of thing. Like, you want angry Lamar, or do you want happy Lamar? You want angry Josh? You want happy Josh, right? Like, I don't see any problem with that. I know some people say, there's too much love against opponents and all this stuff. I'll give you this analogy. My son gets something from me where he talks a lot while he works, right? And if you're ever around me, if I'm walking to the press box and I shoulder check a wall, you know how some of us idiots do. We walk around the corner, we shoulder check the wall because we can't gauge how much clearance we have. I'll literally go, come on, Harrison. You know what I mean? I'll just down talk myself a little bit. Doesn't mean I don't have confidence. Doesn't mean I don't like me. Doesn't mean I don't think I can walk around the corner with the best of them. My son gets in the boxing ring, takes a jab, and he'll say, "Woo, that was a good hit." And it drives his coach crazy. His coach goes, "Stop complimenting your opponent. Go fight him." But guess what? My son will take that jab, like, "Ooh, nice hit. Now let me jaw jack you real quick." He'll throw that right back at you. You know what I mean? So listen, sometimes being complimentary, sometimes appreciating how good your opponent is. Yes, I understand it can be perceived as a weakness. It can be perceived as, well, you're not competitive enough. Trust me, there are people out there who can be complimentary of their opponent and still want to go whoop their ass on Saturday or Sunday.
That's right. And we like that. We'll compliment you with me and David. You catch us at the right time, and you might catch this smoke, baby, because these hands are up to date. Air Force and Army put together, man, you know what it is here on Locked On NFL. And I'm also together with Tyler Rowland here on Locked On NFL. He has the morning show where he hits you with a double shot of espresso, and it's all laid back here in the barbershop each and every day, where we use the help of local experts to get us through the day, just like today. David Harrison, good luck to the Washington Commanders this week. Travel safe, my brother. And we'll see you next Wednesday. Hopefully, you'll be talking about a game that's going to be played in a few days after that. All right, for Tony Wiggins and for my man David Harrison here on Locked On NFL, thank you very much for joining us. Take care.